Before we get to episode 119, I'd like to ask you for your support for the Keystone chapter of the National Federation of the Blind of Pennsylvania. Go to ican'tseeyou.com/coffee and make a purchase at the White Cane Coffee Company website, and the Keystone chapter will earn a 10% commission. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for your support.
From Studio B in Swarthmore, this is the I Can't See You podcast with David. It's like blind people for dummies.
Hello there, and welcome to episode 119 of the I Can't See You podcast. My name is David, at David Benj on all the socials. I really appreciate you joining me for today's episode, and it's dropping on holiday week, Passover and Easter coming up. And it's been nice. Liz has been home for spring break, so she's been around. So I'm actually recording at a decent hour today, midday on Thursday, the day the episode drops. And I have to say, I have a funny story, a quick story. I was at a doctor's appointment, and I'll get to the majority of the doctor's appointment story in a second. And I was reading through emails while I was waiting for the doctor, and I get an email from a newsletter from someone called Adrienne Leeds, who is, if you watch House Hunters International on HGTV, she is the French real estate person when folks are looking in Paris or Nice and some other places. Sometimes when it's a smaller town, she's not the one, but for the most part, she's the one. And I think I mentioned a few episodes ago that I actually did a Zoom seminar with her about a month ago, and one about back in October or November. And it's one of my favorites when she's on HGTV, when she's on House Hunters International. I love it. So I signed up for her newsletter about 6 months ago, and I never realized she is Jewish. And she was telling the story about Passover in France, and where she got these prayer books, which you read, depending on how Jewish you are, you read a little bit of or you read a lot of. When I was growing up as a kid, we kind of did the basics and then ate. Some places we went, some of our friends did the whole book, and it was long and to be honest, very boring for me, and I just wasn't a fan of that. So, but she was talking about these books called Haggadah, and that she bought them somewhere when she had moved to France, and the P had fallen off. First letters were coming off of a lot of the headlines and inner headlines of certain sections. So instead of Passover, it was Assover. And so every time Passover came along, she and the friends that she had the Seders with early on would always joke about and call it Assover instead of Passover. But then that started me thinking when I was watching another show on HGTV, Escape to the Chateau, and they were feeding fish in this moat that they have. They were feeding them baguettes. And so I started putting the two together. I wonder what matzah is like in France. So, maybe one day I'll find out. In case you're wondering, I haven't celebrated Passover in quite a long time, although when the markets, usually a market around here does free matzah, and they do it in five box lots, which it's a lot. I think there's 10 or 20 pieces per box, so it lasts quite a while. Because I don't eat it all at once. You rarely eat it during Passover. It's something I used to eat when I had to take a med. So it's kind of funny. So no matzah this year. So nobody ran it this year. So I will be matzah-less for the year, it seems. So in today's episode, I have a couple of things to talk about. As I previously mentioned, I want to talk about my doctor's appointment and doing that. And kind of a spin-off of that, I noticed a problem with my cane. I'll get to that in a minute. And I have finally figured out what podcasting gear I'm going to get. I'll put links to it in the show notes, but I never realized that the mixer that I'm going to get and that I've been worried about, as I previously mentioned, all the mixers now have touch screens on them. And, like most touch screens other than, iPhones and things like that, they're not accessible. So I had gone back and forth with someone from the company that the unit that I'm going to buy. It's called the company's called Rode. They're an Australian company. The thing I'm going to get is called the Rodecaster Pro. And so the person from Rode who I was going back and forth with via email told me that once you do the basic setup on the touch screen, you really don't have to go back in there unless you hear a problem or something like that. So you basically set it and forget it. Once it's unplugged, once you shut it down, whatever, you're still good. Well, I just found out this past week that you have to make adjustments for the microphones, and each microphone is a little bit different. So then that started me worrying again that, hey, am I going to be able to set this up? And I wasn't sure what microphone I was going to get, and I was going back and forth with a company, mic from a company called Shure, called the SM7B. And it's a pretty pricey mic. It's around $400. And I was going to get that, and I wasn't sure. But I watched a video this week, and they were talking about the Rodecaster Pro, and they said if you use a Rode microphone, they're already set up, and you just have to touch one button in the touch screen. There's no adjustments that you have to make. So the microphone I'm going to get is called the Rode Procaster for the Rodecaster Pro. So I'm good to go, and then I just have to find if I want to do a mic stand or a boom arm to hold the mic, and I'll be good to go. I've actually been holding off because one of the places I'm considering ordering it from is B&H Photo and Video in New York, and because they're a Jewish organization, they're closed during Passover. Passover is not a short holiday. It's a week long, 8 days like Hanukkah, and you know. Just to go off on a slight tangent, I get why people do run their businesses and close during holidays and things like that. I don't understand it. I don't, you start a business to fill a need in a community that is there, and again, it fills the need. It helps the community out, as well as your main goal is to make money. If a business doesn't make money, as I've said before, it's not a business. It's it's a hobby, and I get it, but I don't understand it. The Chick-fil-A thing closing on Sundays. I get it; they're religious, but there's a separation between church and state. I think there should be a separation between business and church as well. But again, free country, you want to do it that way. I don't know how many Jewish people work for B&H. I know obviously the owners are Jewish, but I don't get it. I just don't get businesses that do that. And this is coming from the guy that when I had the video store, until we had kids, we hadn't closed. I think I was open, we opened in 86, had kids in 94. So, 8 years we were open every day. Unless there was, I know that we closed once or twice because of really bad snow, but I think we already had kids at that point. And, I never made anyone work on a holiday that didn't want to work. And sometimes some of the people wanted to work on the holiday because they didn't want to be there with their family. They had an excuse to get out. And when they didn't, there were holidays. I remember working more than a few Easters. I know I worked one or two with my friend Ken, who was working at the store at the time. We both worked. He was actually also living with us. So, he was happy, and we worked it together. And then, once Liz and I got married in 1990, she and I worked it. And, they were abbreviated hours for Christmas and Easter. I think we were only open 8 hours. But, we were open. And, once we had kids, we closed on Christmas. I'm guessing we closed on Easter. I don't remember. And I kind of think we closed on Thanksgiving. But otherwise, the first 8 years the store was open, we were open every day. And again, everybody has different business models and things like that. So I just think that's, that it's kind of funny. And again, I've ordered before from B&H during, online you can order, but, nothing happens until they open back up. usually. And I haven't even tried, I just assumed that they weren't open, so maybe I'm completely wrong here. So, one other thing before I get to my doctor's appointment, just to close out Washington seminar, and I finally have gotten to speak to a sitting Congress woman, other than that guy that I talked to you about last year, where he helped us get from point A to point B and helped us out, the congressman from the Tennessee 2nd Congressional District. I don't remember his name. We had the final Washington seminar meeting this week, and it was with my representative. Her name is Mary Gay Scanlon, and it was a good one. It was the first one that we got to sit down with, and the fact that she's, I'm her constituent, and Simon, who was on the podcast a couple of months back, he was in the meeting, and Harriet, who was on the podcast back in October, she's also a constituent. We all live not super close to one another, but we all live in the 5th Congressional District of Pennsylvania. So we were on the call, and then there were some others from Philly and a couple from other parts of the state. And there was actually a guy named Alan who was from North Carolina, who was, learning on from Emily, who is the legislative director for the National Federation of the Blind of Pennsylvania. So it was very cool. We got to speak to her, and it sounds like she's going to jump on board and as a co-sponsor on HR 431, which is the Affordable Technology Act to get tax credit for, as I've mentioned in the past, for devices that, especially, but not limited to, a blind student needs a Braille note taker, costs $5,000 or $6,000, where, a sighted student just goes to the store and buys a notepad and a pen, and you're good to go. So hopefully that will get passed during this session of Congress, and then hopefully the president will sign it. There's pending bills in each side. I think in the Senate it's S212. So very cool to speak with her, and hopefully it's she sat in with us for easily a half an hour, maybe a little bit more. So it was awesome. So that finishes Washington seminar, and we'll see how that goes. Now to my doctor's appointment. I didn't want to go, and it's funny because, as I've mentioned before, when I go out and about, I have to touch a lot of things. I have to, touch an elevator button to feel what floor I have to go to, and I'm not a fan, and I don't always see where the button exactly is, even to open the door to get on the elevator or push the up button. So when they told me I needed to go, I had called in for a referral, and they said, "Oh, you haven't been here, in over a year," and I knew that. I was there in October of 2019, but why would I go when I have nothing wrong with me that I'm not getting taken care of by a specialist, whether it's the rheumatologist or one of the eye folks that I see? So I didn't really want to go, but I knew that I'd probably have to bite the bullet and go if I wanted to get my next referral, because they let me, by scheduling the appointment, they gave me the referral to the rheumatologist that I had earlier this month. It's April now, earlier in March. But I knew if I had to get another referral, there's no way they would give it to me without the appointment. So I went, and I'm not a huge fan of our doctor. I may have mentioned it before that there's been some things that have happened that, she had double charged Jacob, and, just wasn't great with Jane. Fortunately, Liz still has someone who is getting ready to retire. So I don't, we're probably all going to get ready to move to somebody else. But, for now, we'll keep it and see how it goes. So I made the appointment because Liz is off this week, and it would be easy. I didn't have to get to, go to an Uber to get there and get back, and so forth and so on. So when we got to the hospital, Liz parked, and she walked me to the point where we checked in where they scan you for your temperature, and then she wasn't going to go in any further. Even though she had the shot a couple of weeks ago, she had the J&J shot, there was no reason for her to be around, potential COVID patients. And again, no reason for me to be there either because I don't have anything wrong. At least I don't think so. We'll see once the blood work comes back. Maybe that's why I needed to go. I'll, of course, report back to you. So she leaves me at this one checkpoint, and then I know how to go. And, there's other people, about. So I, got behind people. I could tell they were heading the way I wanted to head. And I'm walking through, and as I'm walking through this hospital, I was thinking about the TV show New Amsterdam, which we had watched a couple nights before, and it said, we don't want people coming here unless they have to come here, unless they're sick or they need immediate medical attention. Why would we bring someone in who doesn't have COVID? And I said to Liz, I said, why am I going to that doctor's appointment? Because this is exactly, and then of course there was an issue with someone had gone, and not been scared of getting COVID, they would have treatment instead of being, brain dead and put on life support. In the show, not. So I'm walking down this hallway thinking of that and get to the main, lobby of Crozier Chester Medical Center. And there's a line, and I think, okay, this is another checkpoint. And I'm listening to see what other people are doing. And I'm standing, hopefully 6 feet behind the people I was walking down the hallway with. I don't know if I was or not. I could hear them talking, but it wasn't, like I was right next to them. So as I'm standing there and I'm listening to people further up, I'm thinking, this is for COVID shots. But as I scanned the lobby, it looked like there was a barrier that forced you to stay in this line. And as I continued to look and then someone walked past, I realized that wasn't a barrier. That was just where the carpeting and the tile met. And again, I sometimes I see things so differently than what they are. It kind of makes me feel dumb sometimes. But there was no harm. I was still early. So I jumped out of that line and walked around to where I knew the elevators were, staying on the tile because I knew if I stayed on the tile, I was heading the right way. If I got onto the carpet, I wouldn't know exactly if I was heading the right way, as well as I think there are chairs in the carpeted area. Not 100%, I don't know. But I got to the elevator, and again, like I said, I'm feeling for the button to open the elevator door. And I find it, and I'm thinking, okay, and I brought some sanitizing wipes with me. So once I got to the appointment and I gave all my cards and information, I could wipe everything down. So I go and I check in, and I give my cards, and I had no problem. Once on the elevator, I could feel I had to go to 5. I could feel, and I knew it was the top floor, so I knew the button was going to be up at the top. And, probably to the right. I think there were 2 rows. So I get to the floor. I know where the office is. I find the office. I go in and check in. And, then I have to sign something. I have to sign, it's my copay is $25 for my general practitioner. And, she said, okay, we'll call you when you're ready. Well, when I go and I sit down in the waiting room, and I'm wiping off my cane, I realize that Nigel is missing. And I actually called the whole cane Nigel. But Nigel is it was a keychain that we bought in London a few years ago. And it's a beef eater. It was a rubbery substance, so wouldn't, if it clocked me in the head, which it always does, because, I'm moving the cane around, I take it out of the car, it hits me in the head, the keychain part, wouldn't cut me or put my eye out or whatever. I realized Nigel's missing. Now, a few days earlier, maybe even a week or 2 earlier, Ziggy was playing with my cane. He loves the cane. I don't know if he thinks it's a big stick, but he loves playing with it, and he knocked it over. And the strap, where Nigel was attached to, the top of the strap is secured onto the cane by, kind of a threaded piece of plastic. And that had cracked. And a part of it had fallen off, but it was still secure on top of the cane. Well, it wasn't there. And I'm like, oh my God, I've lost Nigel. And then I started thinking, well, it's not too terrible because, the reason I put Nigel on, and I named him Nigel. It was just a beefeater, an English beefeater, red suit, black hat, tall black hat, guard the queen. The reason we put stuff like that on our canes, and I had a keychain from Jane's sorority on there before I put Nigel on. Also, it was nice and flat. It was a rubbery type substance, would whack me on the face. Sometimes that one, was smooth and rubbery. So, if it hit my bald head sometimes, it would kind of stick a little bit. But I switched that out a while ago. And I had Nigel on there, and I called it Nigel. And when I would say, hey, where's Nigel? If I didn't put it in the same spot, like when we were moving, I would move it around and forget where I put it. I would just say to Liz or the kids, hey, where's Nigel? And, they would tell me. And when we would go out, I'd say, come on, Nigel, here we go. We're going out today, and blah, 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 blah. So I lost Nigel, and I texted Liz once I was back in the examining room because they called me pretty quickly. She looked around the car, and she actually then came in and came all the way up to the office to see and didn't find him anywhere. So I'm like, oh no. The next thought was, did it fall off at the house and Ziggy eat it? If you listen to last week's episode, he eats everything. And there were a couple of more things since I recorded that episode that he ate, and we had to make him throw up. I'll save you that at this point, but a couple days in a row where vinyl gloves and paper towels, I think, was the other thing. So, we're wondering where Nigel is, and I'm figuring, you know what, we'll just worry about it once I get home. We'll take a look. Maybe it's in the driveway. So, have my appointment. I take off my mask so they can take my temperature, even though I had been scanned downstairs. They did all the normal stuff. They put the thing on your fingers so they could see your blood oxygen level and see your pulse. It was 99 on the blood oxygen level and 69 on the pulse, if you're wondering. And then I'm waiting there, as I said earlier, and going through emails. And the doctor comes in, and, we start talking. And other than listening to my heart and us talking, there wasn't, she didn't look in my throat. She didn't look in my nose. She didn't look anywhere. She told me, she said, because of the psoriatic disease, it being an autoimmune disease, I should have gotten the shot. And she said, you can get it, go out front and they'll help you schedule it. And I'm hoping for the J&J one, but I think the hospital was doing Pfizer, I think. I like the J&J one because it's one and done. I don't have to find, a ride 2 times. I only need to find it 1 time. Obviously if I can't get it done this week, I have to schedule it around Liz's work schedule with school. So, I finish up the appointment and she says, well, we have to do a follow-up appointment. And I said, oh, we do? Yeah. She said, yeah, well, you have to have all this blood work done, as I said. And usually it used to be, and with Liz, when you get blood work done, the doctor calls in a day or 2 and tells you, okay, this is good, this is bad, this is this is that. None of that seems to be the thing with my doctor. And again, not 100% happy with her. If I get charged for another appointment, I'm going to be irritated if it's just to go over the blood work, which again, I think it is. But she says, my insurance will allow me to do a televisit or a tele-appointment or whatever. So, I give my information out at the desk and I get an email in a day or 2 with a link to, for the appointment. And I think it's next week. And when I get the email, there's a link at the top, but then there's a paper, a PDF that shows you how to use it. Well, on my computer, the PDF is not accessible. On the on my phone with VoiceOver, it was somewhat accessible, not 100%. So I'm worried now because my appointment is during the day. Next week, both kids will be at work. Liz will be at work. So I don't know if I could do a dry run to see if I could figure out how to do it on my own. But I'm a little concerned. So we'll see how that goes. So not 100% happy with my doctor. So if you're in Delaware County and listening to this and you know a good general practitioner, I am definitely looking to move to someone new. We'll see how it goes. I guess with this follow-up appointment, and then when she schedules me again. I know about preventative maintenance, for things and people, but to go to this appointment, it just didn't, it didn't seem, can't you schedule the blood work outside of that and then just have one appointment? I don't know. So we'll see how that goes. But again, not 100% happy. Now let's get back to Nigel. So we get home and Nigel's not in the driveway and he's not in the house. Jane had looked around the house and she was the one most concerned that Ziggy had eaten it. So I said, well, you know what? Maybe I lost it on our walk. As I've been saying, as I mentioned last week, we took him for his first walk and we're up to, last night we actually did a little bit further, but there's two routes that we go. One is about 3/4 of a mile. One is only about half a mile. And last night we went a little further because we did the shorter route because it looked like it was going to rain again. So we were worried that we'd be caught in the long route and far away from home if it started to pour. When we did the short route, and it wasn't raining, we continued on and, I think we did over a mile yesterday. Again, it's not very far, but the dog liked it. And so we go out for the walk on the day of the appointment and, Jane turns the flashlight on her phone. Jane usually goes with us. She didn't go with us last night, but Jane usually goes. And I said, well, let's look. And the night before, when we were taking Ziggy on this same route, we came to, like any dog, he likes sticks. We came to this tree that had a couple of limbs down, and one of the limbs was fairly substantial, probably 6 or 8 feet, maybe 2 or 2.5 inches in diameter. And Jane is saying, look at this big stick, Ziggy, come on, take this with. And of course he tried, but it was too big. But I tapped on it with my cane. And as we're getting close to it, I said to Jane, wouldn't it be funny if it's, by that tree with those limbs that were down? And sure enough, it was. We found it. And again, to think of George Carlin when people are, when with his story about golf, when you hit the ball and then you find it, you should be happy, put it in your pocket and move on. I couldn't believe that we found it. I didn't think that we would find it. Now, the sad part is, the top is now completely broken, so I can't put him back on. I mean, obviously, I still have him, and it's really not an issue. Again, the reason, you put something like that on a white cane, because when a whole bunch of blind people are in a room together and you put your cane somewhere, you want to be able to get your cane back because, they're sized, to fit the person who is using it. It should come up to the bottom of your chin, and obviously everybody's different heights. So I was very happy that we found Nigel, and I'll use him again for something else. I brought him home and washed him off because God only knows, I'm sure dogs had peed on him and whatnot. So we found him, and he's back home and clean and and ready for the next cane that I get that I can attach him to. So I was surprised though, and we were all relieved that it wasn't in Ziggy's belly. I mean, he was still going to the bathroom and everything, so we thought it wasn't too bad if he had swallowed it. But at this point, it would have had to have. They probably would have needed to do surgery to get it out of him, because I don't know. Nigel is probably about 2 inches by maybe an inch and a half. Fairly squared, but his head is obviously not squared. But his body is mostly squared. So I was happy to get that back, because when we were in the UK back in 2017, when we were technically picking Jane up from her semester abroad in December of 2017, we got it specifically for my cane, because we were looking around. I wasn't sure if I was going to get a beefeater or a phone box. That was something we looked at. Double-decker bus. They were just too big. Some of those were just too big, and Nigel fit the bill. So, was happy with that and happy to get him back. So that is all that I have for you today, episode 119. I really appreciate you joining. I hope you have a happy holiday season. If you celebrate Passover, I hope your matzah was good, even though it doesn't seem like anybody was giving it away this year. I hope your Easter is great. We're looking forward to Easter on Sunday with the traditional cheesecake dessert that Liz always makes. And I hope yours is good. Again, I hope you continue to stay safe and be well. Wash your hands, wear your mask if you want. If not, remember, don't get too close to me. And I will talk to you next week. Thanks again for listening.
Thank you for listening to the I Can't See You podcast with David. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen. And don't forget to share the podcast with your friends.